Hello, everybody. I hope you're not watching this because it would be much more fun to be with you live. But in case I'm not, here is a presentation about parrot conservation, looking for health and transformation. So it's a lot of stories and some medicine. And please do find me by email later or by WhatsApp, and be open to questions and comments. That would really mean a lot to me. So here we go. So part of my work as an avian veterinarian, it's been going on. I've been working in Central and South America as a wildlife veterinarian for about 40 years. And here you can see the area where I've worked. We could throw in the Philippines, but that would throw off our map. And so why would an avian veterinarian want to do parrots, and why would we be oriented towards transformation? What about medicine, right? Well, as you all know, veterinary medicine is hugely about people. But I didn't know that when I started off some 40 years ago. Can you guess which picture was about 40 years ago, right? As a wildlife veterinarian, and I realized that conservation was all about people. And parrots, well, why parrots? They're great. And they're also the most endangered group of birds in the world. And I was particularly motivated as a young child because we lost our only wide-ranging native parakeet, especially from the southeast. They went all the way to Iowa. They were there. And we don't have them anymore. And I really don't want that to happen to other people. And so I went as a wildlife veterinarian working with parrot conservation in Guatemala some 35 years ago, and it was during the Civil War there. We were one of the first parrot projects in the world working there, and it's a beautiful country, but it was really hard to do parrot conservation because of the societal turmoil. We were studying the yellow-naped Amazon, and maybe there were about 50,000 back in the 80s. We just have to guess. And we did population counts, and here's a graph just showing this one area where we counted. For about 250 would come in every night to roost. It's something that Amazons do. And then it dropped down to zero. Why was that? That is because there was about 100% poaching of all nests. And this is a story not just in Guatemala. This is a story throughout the range of this bird and in many other species for the national and the international pet trade. And so right now there's maybe 400, 500. It's really hard to say yellow-nape Amazons in Guatemala. And as a matter of fact, the scarlet macaws used to be throughout Guatemala, except in the highlands. And they're gone from the south coast, and the only reason why they're coming back up in the North Forest is because of conservationists, like you're going to be one day. So we need something to change because we're extracting and harming our birds of the world. And they are in trouble. You can see the statistics there that half are declining worldwide, and almost a third are critically endangered. So there is much we can do to improve conservation outcomes, and we really need this to be working in conservation because of the parrot crisis that we're in right now. And it's not all due to trapping, but we as avian veterinarians and part of a conservation team can also address that, because what we're going for is population health, and these are the categories that respond to population health. And look at all the different categories of population health that goes in to how we need to take care of our ecosystems and our habitats and our birds. All kinds of birds, because it's all one flock, our ecosystems, and then our human communities. Because as we said, conservation is really about people in the long run. But let's talk about what we can do with our veterinary training. There are definitely some things that we add to a conservation team. And what is the health of the adults? We don't usually try to trap adult parrots. It's very stressful. You have to have a really good reason for it. And you have to be able to have the resources that whatever you learn from trapping adults actually will pay off for something you can actually do for them. But what we can do is be observers. We can be biologists, we can be ornithologists and get out in the field. And I always say, take bad pictures, because I'm going to do it anyway, because we can actually find out a lot by observing their population their movements, their reproductive ecology, and just pictures of them themselves. So here's a scarlet macaw in Guatemala, and there are some things that you can note about the bird. It's a little hard to say, but you could say, well, that's a thin bird. You can see that the sternum there, the chia is there. Macaws tend to run a little bit thin. The feathers are ragged. They're fragmented on the edges. They're a darker color than they should be. We have scaling here on the beak, which is normal, especially in older birds, but we don't want to see too much of it. And a fairly wrinkled face, but not overly so. So it's definitely an adult. And these are some of the things that we can comment on. We can also look at the vibrancy of the feathers as well as aging the birds, which we want to know because we're looking at their behavior and seeing how they're responding and foraging in the wild. So these are yellow nape Amazon. They developed this nape. They're about 3 years old or so, right? And we want to be able to, when they're in the air, we can also take bad pictures of them, and we can comment on what percentage of the birds are young birds. They don't have a yellow nape here. So this is actually a family of 3 following behind 2 adults. And so when we do our population counts, we're looking for the percentage of juveniles because that tells us about population health. And by taking pictures, we can comment on that. And here's a flock of young juvenile parrots. They kind of hang out in their own individual flock before they come into breeding age. It's a lovely thing to see. And it's rarer in many parts, especially of Central America, because the parrots have just been trapped out. Continuing on with looking at adults, here we can see the chia bone here. Not that unusual. Some ragged feathers here. What's going on with that? Was that a chick in a nest that got wet and had excess mites? And so we're looking at the quality of the feathers. Those ragged feathers mean something. And I would just say poor nesting conditions, cavity conditions. Here's a fun one. Here's a scarlet macaw in Honduras. And we went to go climb the nest tree. It was a big pine tree to see if the nest was active. And she came out of the cavity and we said, oh, she may have eggs. And she didn't fly away very far. And so while the climbers are climbing to document if there are eggs in the nest, I'm looking at how she's sitting. One thing, she's got a poochy abdomen here, lost some feathers here. So, she got an egg. Look at the way she's sitting. She's kind of rocked back. And indeed, we were able to document that she was in the process of egg laying. She had 2 eggs that day and 3 the next. So, yeah, we can spot if they're egg laying. These feathers from a scarlet macaw were found at the base of a tree that had soiled eggs that failed and did not hatch. And these are the feathers from the parents. And look at these severe stress lines. This is caused by a release of corticosterone. Oh, look at all these lines here, right? And this happens when there's stress, lack of nutrition, disease, cold. Something's going on where they're not being able to put nutrition into the growing blood feather. And so what's going on with the adults? This should not be there, especially multiple ones. So maybe we had some aging and older sick adults. And then there are classic examples of the presence of disease. These are green parakeets in Guatemala. I took these pictures and you can see that we've got overgrown and misshapen nails and beaks here. Was not able to test for this, was not able to capture this. It could be all kinds of things. So as far as disease in our wild birds that you could pick up with photography, we're just now discovering and having the ability to do some testing of wild parrots in some countries more than others, and finding that there's things out there that maybe shouldn't be, that have been introduced from the international parrot trade and birds being released, rescue centers, pets being mixed with the wild population. So there's actually a very strong need to know what's going on with our wild parrots. Ask me a question, I'll be happy to tell you a lot more about this. The problem is it's expensive and most of these countries don't allow the testing, or you have to get permits, which are really complicated. And then you have to export them to a lab because most of these countries don't have in-country labs. Problematic. That's probably why we don't do that so much. So one piece that we can think about in medicine that's not widely thought of is the human impact on our wild parrots when we're bird watching, doing photography, counting them, certainly climbing nests and the parents see us, or we're looking at chicks or handling them. We did a study in Paraguay, I think it was the first of its kind in parrots, that talks about we were mostly using flight aversion when they would take off when the humans came close. And we definitely, birds do react, they do change their behavior, and it has an impact on their physiology and their health and their ability to raise successful nests. So we want to look at, we're not innocuous, whether we're handling birds at a rescue center or in our clinic, or you're just watching them in the wild, we have an impact. And so we need more studies on this, and we need veterinarians that say, well, let's pay attention to this, shall we? So what about chick health? I'm going to try to maybe go a little bit quicker because I know you all only have an hour here. This is a young scarlet macaw, and we can see some little scabs here. This is probably from larvae in the nest, maybe from some insect bites. This dirt is normal. It's from the parents feeding them. So to do a really good health exam, it helps to bring the chicks temporarily down from their nest. We've done this a lot, and we can't see that it causes an impact for fledgling success. But again, we want to be aware that it could. We also have fairly good optics these days, so we can take pictures of the chicks without lowering them down. 3 yellow-naped Amazons, about at fledgling age, they come down, and we are able to weigh them, which is just a primary characteristic of their body condition as well as their growth. If you can climb the tree more than once, complete physical examination, heart rate, respiratory rate, again, depending on how much time you can spend with the birds, but you could just do a thorough physical examination in the field to see what's going on and to document their growth. Biometrics, measuring beaks and wings and wing cords and tail feathers. So as you can see here, it's possible to do just a complete clinical exam, but it depends on what your conservation goals are. Can we use this information to do something about it? Are we losing chicks? Are they dying in the nest? What's going on? And so to collect the information is really nice, but we trade that off versus our resources of our time, as well as the potential stress for the chicks. And always, we train so that we are replaced. Every opportunity is a training opportunity so that the biologists can do the work and everyone can do the work, and other teams across the ways can go. So what are some of the common things we see? This is a yellow-headed parrot in Belize. Fly strike myiasis is something that we do see. In some areas, it can be severe enough, perhaps leading to anemia, infection, poor feather growth, so they cannot fledge. And here's a yellow-naped Amazon on the back. And you can see this is a scab here, an inflammation around that. The larva has already gone. And usually it's innocuous. You've got a couple, but sometimes they can have tens, and we are worried about this. Young yellow-naped Amazon chick, here's the head. What's going on with this flaky skin? Could have been lack of nutrition or nutritional disorder. The bird also was heavy infested with mites, so it could have been an allergic reaction to that as well. Speaking of mites, this is a young scarlet macaw. These are mite colonies that are on the bird, and so they live with mites. It's something they can live through, but in preliminary studies, we do feel that they can have a load and produce anemia and poor feather growth and poor body condition. So in our endangered species, we just go ahead and treat. There's Ivamec here, treating them with, there we go. We'll also treat with larvae using a combination of Ivamec and a Silvadene cream. It's a silver sulfadiazine cream to remove the larvae. You can actually pull them out with forceps as well. We want to reduce that load and get the chick back up. Here's a young yellow-naped Amazon, about 2 months of age. What can you see that's not great with this bird? All right, so you just go ahead and guess while I talk about it. Pale feathers, curved feathers on the head, and an uneven growth, often affiliated with poor nutrition in birds. Lack of energy, kind of a small eye. Also, the beak is short and it's wide. the sign of lack of growth. This chick that it was near a schoolyard, and so the school accepted it, adopted the bird, and the bird was found dead at the base of the tree. So probably tried to fledge and wasn't able to because of the poor feather growth extended to the wings and the tails. So we were weighing this yellow-naped chick and others. It was a study we did in Guatemala every week. So here's the weight curve versus the age, and most parrots, young chicks, grow like this, and then before they fledge, they lose weight. Parrots quit feeding them. They don't want to eat. They're getting ready to fly. So Paco, the bird that died, here's the weight. So definitely outside of the curve of what's normal. The bill length, the length of the bill. So here's all of our birds, and here's Paco. So we were able to document signs of poor growth. Body condition, it's subjective, but you can get more precise about it within your team. These are 2 scarlet macaws. Depending on the age, you look about where, what part of the body where you're going. You're looking for subcutaneous fat. You're looking for a rounded abdomen, or whether it's concave or convex or straight down, the amount of how fat the toes are. And you can also look at the chia to see about the musculature there, because they do store and build up protein in their muscle mass, but they're not flying yet, so it's a little tricky to use. Also, the fat pads here on the back of the head. So this chick, because it's straight here and there's subcutaneous fat, I would put this bird at a 3, maybe a 3.5. Okay, now look at this scarlet macaw chick. The fat is just rolling off of the bird. This is, just really rounded the abdomen. Look at this fat here. This was a captive bird. It was brought in from the wild and was raised so it could be reintroduced at a later time. I don't know why that bird put on fat. It was a captive diet. I've never seen a bird like that in the wild. So that is a 5 plus. Although I have seen 4s in scarlet macaws. Going, why are chicks putting on so much extra weight and fat? Chicks, like the adults, have stress bars. You can see here in the tail and the wings. You get enough of these, like this one, and it's going to cause problems when they're ready to fledge. Plus, it demonstrates that something is off with that bird's growth and the health and the nutrition. So that's a big signal. So we count the stress lines, or we estimate in categories how many there are. And technically, there should be none. Sometimes they bump up against the nest cavity, but there shouldn't be any. So when we see this, we know something has happened in the nest. All kinds, as I mentioned, there's a need to understand disease analysis and health analysis and stress and then see if there's infection. So we definitely can perform this, even in some pretty out of the way areas, using the battery of the car and doing the work in laboratories that are run by a generator. And we want to be looking at what's going on in the blood, checking for malaria. They don't tend to get blood parasites, like Plasmodium would probably be one of the biggest ones that we might see. Or Hemoproteus. We just don't see it. But we do want to check, especially if we've got loss of life. So here we are with one laboratory that's in an indigenous village in Honduras, and done a lot of work with chick health. And I have to tell you, I really enjoy doing it. I want to know what's going on with every single wild bird and bird that comes into the rescue center. But our greatest loss is from poaching, up to 100% of the nest if we're not guarding the nest. So I have paid less attention to chick health over the years because, one, we don't have the resources to address it, and that's not what's killing them. That's not what's restricting the population growth. So anyway, we can check for anemia. Young chicks are naturally anemic. You go, oh my gosh, they have, their blood looks thin and their hematocrit might be around 20, depending on their age, and that's normal. It rises as they age. They had elevated white blood cells. This was a group of macaws. We did young macaw chicks in the wild about 10 years ago in Honduras. But birds also have stress leukograms where the white blood cells can elevate really quickly. So was there an infection? Was there ongoing stress? Was it just us taking the chick out of the nest and taking blood? Looking for microbials, gram stains, and cultures in the feces. We did a big study of this in yellow-nape Amazon chicks identifying. This is before we could use DNA to figure out what the microbes were in feces. Just a nice spread of various gram positives and gram negatives, and various not very heavy fungi, but certainly yeast was found in birds that to us we perceived as healthy, and they fledged okay. So just like maybe with cats or dogs or with anyone else that you're taking care of, it isn't just the animal itself that we do the physical exam. We have to look at the whole household, which includes nest and the forest and other species in the forest. Oh, this was a yellow-naped Amazon adult, a female, that had built a nest in a termite mound up in a tree. So we measure everything we can about the trees and the cavities, the depth of the cavity, the direction of the cavity. All this can impact chick health. So just taking you on a tour of some bird cavities, we look for if the cavities are moist, and also what is the insect life. A certain amount of insect life is normal. They're eating the feces. They have their own little community going on in there. These we often see in dryer nests. Can't tell you the species that is. These are soldier flies. So the larva is here in the material, and this is what they fledge out as the adult flies. If you get enough of these, they'll chew on the chick's skin and cause some damage. Just some fun pictures. We thought this was an active nest. It was, but not for macaws. You can test for fungi in some parts of the world with some species of parrots. This can be deadly in the cavities. And so you could actually do preventative treatment of the material if you suspect it in your area and if you found it. This we thought was a cavity, an active cavity, because birds kept going into it, macaws kept going into it. But this is a drinking tree. It is able to store water, and it's like a little microenvironment going on there, and the birds are coming in here to drink. So parrots, we often hear, oh, they don't need to drink in the wild. Well, they do. We just often don't see them doing it. These are two young great green macaws, critically endangered parrot in Honduras. The nest floods here, and they're a little bit wet, and look how muddy this is. So this can have consequences for their feather health, and they have a hard time thermoregulating. Here's a nice, pretty scarlet macaw nest. Wet on this side, wet, so it's getting rained on. So, this is not optimal. We want to see eggs that are touching each other and in the center of the nest. That means she's actively incubating, and it means health. Are there cracks? Are they white? What's going on with them? This is a yellow-naped Amazon. This is what we want to see. Egg-centered touch of a slightly oval shape. When we find that they've been buried, it usually means that they have been abandoned. They won't hatch. I could tell you a story about how I pulled these out thinking they were abandoned. I couldn't check for life. I was candling them in the field. And I get in the laboratory, and there's still live embryos in there. So we want to be cautious about removing these. We removed them because the parents had not come back for the last 3 days. Sometimes cavities are just a mess. And this is in Nicaragua. And why would a yellow-naped Amazon, here's her egg, nest in such an awful looking nest? It's wet, it's dirty, it's got some snails in it, and these are old eggs from a tree duck. So why would they do that? Maybe lack of suitable cavities. That egg did not hatch. So here's another cavity. We have feces from the porcupine. Here's the yellow-naped egg, slightly buried, and older eggs. Again, I'm not sure what species that is. That's not a parrot, but it was definitely, you could see that the competition for cavities are intense, not just for predators, but also for other birds. Here's a cavity that the female parrot was going in a lot, and the climber went up and just scared herself to death. There was an owl, a screech owl nesting in there. So can you see the animal sharing the cavity here? We thought this was an active nest. Just pause for a little bit. Who can see? Who can see the animal here? Right? So here's a bat. Bats can share cavities with the birds. They're usually up above the floor, up as it extends up towards the sky. Surely they can cause impacts. I've seen it with no impact. I've seen chicks that have respiratory disease in cavities with bats. And I've also seen discoloration in the feathers, perhaps from the urine. So we don't do anything about it, but we just remark on it. Here's the cavity. Who's in this cavity? Can you see? Here's a yellow-nape Amazon chick about ready to fledge, and here's a black iguana. They eat yellow-nape Amazon chicks. They're predators. And here you can see that after the iguana's been scared away from the cavity, that bird fledged. So I don't know what they were doing, sharing a cavity. Were they friends? It was just really unusual that we did not lose that chick to that iguana. This is in Nicaragua. Can you see who's there in the cavity? Snakes are a real problem with many parrots. We lose a lot of chicks. We could lose some adults. And here is that snake that was in that cavity. So optics are really good. The less handling we can do of the parrot. We call these a snake camera, but it's an endoscope camera that can get into cavities. Trail cameras to be able to see parent activity and poachers. Good lights. Phones are probably the most common optic. Little phones and GoPros are used more and more to drop into the cavity and to document the work. So here is a endoscope camera. This is the yellow-faced parrot. This is a project we have in Paraguay where the birds nest in termite mounds on the ground. So here's the conservation team, and we just place the endoscope camera in to see if the nests are active and the health of the chicks and their age of the chicks. Here is, again, the same species that is in termite mounds. Here you can see a chick here who wants to come out. And these are not the parents. This is a visiting flock of yellow-faced parrots. Because we use trail cameras, we were able to document, they're very social. It's a very social group of birds. They move in flocks for most of the year, larger flocks. So we're able to capture this bird fledging and some of this unusual activity. Here's a trail camera that is catching a poacher. And you can see he's got the young bird and he drops the bird to the ground. So they were able to identify the poacher. They were able to talk to the poacher. They did not arrest him or press charges. It's a delicate balance where you live and work within the communities where people are trapping parrots. So addressing poachers is some of the things that we can do for our interventions. There are other things that we can do that can help, especially if we think we have limited cavities or limited safe cavities. We can do nest boxes. We're doing this on the coast, the Atlantic coast in Guatemala with the yellowhead parrot, and it might just save the species in Guatemala. It's an amazing thing. So just various ways of people placing nest boxes. This is in the Bay Islands in Honduras. Not the safest tree to climb. I know a lot of climbers who would not go up. But a lot of our Amazon species could successfully raise chicks in nest boxes. This is in Paraguay, placing macaw nest boxes, a little bit harder and heavier to do. Here they nest macaws in palm trees, so that's why they're being located. And it's interesting to note that often our target species is not the one staying in the nest box. Peregrines, we have bat falcons, we have ducks, we have parakeets when we were going for macaws. But they need homes too. Nest boxes, you can't just put them up. They need to be closed off when they're not active, often to just keep the Africanized bees out. It's a real problem. And so we have to treat the nest boxes to keep the bees out. And here you can see it's going up in the off season to lower the nest box. Tricky to climb trees when there's Africanized bees in them. So we close them off and then open up in the breeding season, so that we can, the birds can reuse them again. So just the point here is just that it's heavy management. These are nest boxes in Guatemala. Sometimes the local bee people are very happy that we're doing a nest box study or as a intervention, because we'll call on them to come take the nest box down, and they're happy with all the honey that they can find. We can also manipulate the chicks. And it's going to come up, even if you're just studying birds and you don't want to intervene with them. You find sick chicks, you find poached chicks. It just comes up. So here's the case. Here's 3 healthy scarlet macaw chicks in Honduras. It is really rare for the 3rd chick to survive, especially to healthy and not be that far behind in age. However, in this area, this nest was going to get poached. There was no way it could be protected. So we had to pull all 3 chicks into the rescue center. And they're flying free now, but they did so without being in a family union. Sometimes if chicks are far behind, here's the younger chick, slim, body condition of 3, the older chick. Macaws can be several weeks difference in age, and they can still, the second chick can fledge, but it's a concern. We often climb those trees to make sure that that chick is doing okay. Wet chicks and wet cavities, very thin, feathers probably will not be able to grow adequately, full of mites. Both of these chicks died in the nest cavity. Sometimes we see unusual things. This was a chick. This chick is older. It was about 10 days of age, and we found this leg that was growing incorrectly. Probably been an early fracture from the parent. So we took the chick with permission of the indigenous community. And here's that bird, a permanent member of our rescue center. I think it's a pretty good quality of life. This is in Paraguay, showing how we use the endoscope camera and drop it in. Now we use a GoPro, but this was an endoscope camera in these days. And we found this chick. And what do you see going on with that red and green chick? Thin, right? Tired, weak, covered with mites. That's what that flicking is. It's just getting bit one after the other. The parents did not spend the night. This is a chick that's it's less than 2 weeks of age. And it was during the winter time in Paraguay. So we treated the chick right there and gave him fluids and treated for the parasites and put the chick back. And then a cold front came through. And this is what we found under that examination. Up breathing, so it's just extreme hypothermia, right? And you can see some of the scarring here, these sort of very superficial wounds. That's from the soldier fly larva. So we felt we had to remove the chick so the chick would survive. And here they are treating the chick in the kitchen of the ranch house. It's over a wood fire because we needed to warm the chick up, give warm fluids. Try to save the chick. So we weren't set up to do a rescue center, but it turns out that the chick responded really well, as you can see here. And we trained the bird for release, and now the bird is free flying. And the last time we saw the chick, it had moved into Brazil and Paraguay and came back with a friend. This is a rescue center in Honduras. You have to do quite a bit of intervention in handling chicks. A lot of the chicks don't fledge successfully, and the patrollers find them on the ground. And then we also get confiscated chicks, and sometimes donated adults as well. Here is an intervention with the yellow-faced parrot in Paraguay. They were clearing this field for agricultural use, and they just bulldozed right over an active termite mound that had chicks. And so our people just happened to come across it right as it happened and save the chicks. There were 4 and 1 died. So again, accidentally, there we are, caught rescuing birds we didn't plan. So we built a small release cage, got help from the local communities to raise the birds, and they were released. What we try to do, though, is if we can, is a more regular system of rescue and release. And this is just showing various community members that we always involve. It's their birds, so they are the ones that work with them. And while we do all this work with wild birds and birds in rescue situations, is always be aware of judging their welfare. I'm a fan of the 5 domains model. We can call it scientific. There's some controversy about we may not be really good at judging the categories, but they're very precise about all the different ways we need to be thinking about welfare in parrots. So I would recommend using this because it helps you think of things you would not have normally thought of. And it's just the broad categories of nutrition, environment, health, behavior, and mental state. So this is a little orange-chinned parakeet in Nicaragua. So what do you think about the nutrition? That's only evidence of sunflower seeds, and there's no food, there's no water. Environment, it's on a boat dock, gasoline, a lead-based paint here. Look at the caging, can't fly, doesn't have a friend, doesn't have sanctuary. The health of the bird, I could not tell, but you would be suspicious of high stress. Behavior, could not do many of the behaviors that the bird evolved to do. And the mental state, perhaps depressed, perhaps lonely, perhaps stressed. We can make those guesses because what we're aiming for is that the birds have welfare status that fits their evolution and their physiological niches in their environment. Egg manipulation. So yes, I told you about sometimes we've pulled eggs that are buried or look abandoned, or you can produce eggs with captive parents and then move the eggs into wild cavities. You can move eggs in between cavities. It usually takes a certain amount of sophistication because, as I said, the third chick and the third egg often doesn't hatch or dies. So there's reasons, especially in very critical areas with species that are in trouble, is to be able to manipulate eggs. Other interventions that veterinarians can be involved in is genetics, just trying to understand if we have any bottlenecks, what are the exact species and subspecies, where should we be releasing our birds. So here is the scarlet macaw. We can see not much yellow here, and here's a lot of yellow. This is the Central American subspecies. We only knew this, I don't know, 20, 30 some years ago. And of course, we can do genetics to figure it out. This is the Central American scarlet macaw, and here's the South American. So when they say that the scarlet macaw is threatened or vulnerable in some parts of the range, but in other parts of the range in countries in Central America, there may only be a couple hundred, and in El Salvador, there's none left. So we do want to pay attention, and this was a study with the Central American scarlet macaw with haploid groups, and we find out that, there's sort of a natural delineation about where they range. And what does this mean for the health? What does it mean for our conservation projects? So you've done your population health, you've done your work, you've done your observation, and we find that, well, like most wild parrots, parasites, predation, malnutrition, Africanized bees, it's right up there. But in many areas, this is where is the problem. Also habitat loss. So you have altered habitats, then you have 100% poaching on top of it, and our populations have just crashed and are crashing. And we consider all birds part of one flock, and so really poor health and welfare of parrots in the homes in various countries around the world. People think an old parrot is 5 years of age when they live to be 80 something in captivity, and they have really low welfare and high death rates. So those birds are suffering, and then people seek to replace them in a hurry. So this is also a piece of well-being, and this are huge factors: loss of habitat, human insecurity. Many of these places we can't safely protect the nest, and just human well-being. They need to flourish and have jobs and stability to be able to be conservationists and to make choices. Continue on with interventions because human security and trapping is the main cause of loss of parrots in many of our areas, is the involvement and the employment of local people. These are indigenous communities in La Mosquitia, Honduras, and just protecting the nest. Otherwise, all of the nests would be trapped. And so it provides employment, and it also can protect the nest. Some areas are hotter than none. This is Honduras. It's a pretty tricky area to work in. I'm there right now. If you guys are watching this, we're doing a solidarity campaign where I'm camping for a couple months with these rangers here in Honduras. And we had to bring the military in with us They'll be joining us to keep the people safe and also any of our visitors during the Solidarity Campaign. My friend Pedro was murdered protecting a yellownape Amazon nest in Guatemala and returning back to Honduras with a scarlet macaw nest. And these are the villages. People want the land, and it's also an area of the drug trade. So they're at risk more before for their villages being burned, but still their leaders being assassinated and their forest being taken. So Tomas resisted the illegal takeover of the land and the parrots and reported certain families to the authorities. And in revenge, those families came and tried to kill him. And I was with him just 5 months later. He did survive. And here he is at the river telling me his story about how he survived, where bullets are and were removed and where some still are. And I said, Tomas, why are you willing to risk your life for the parrots? And he said, Doctora, everything is at risk, so I'm willing to risk everything. If the parrots don't make it, neither do my people. So part of this parrot crisis impacts conservationists. It impacts people losing their cultural and spiritual heritage, losing parrots that are seed dispersers for the health of our forest, people losing their lives. And so truly, when we're out there to help parrots, everybody is at risk. And we want to be able to address all those issues. And surely one person can't do it all, but that's why we work in teams. We work in health teams so that we can take care of the families of all beings and that they can eat and have choices. And sometimes it works. It's a fragile success. This is in Honduras where they had 100% poaching in 2011 and 12. And then we started up through 2014 and 15. They began to protect a few nests. So we raised some money so that they could actually have income and not just do sustenance farming and hunting to survive. And they wanted to protect their parrots. And so they did patrols. And this was the first step of the first rescue center, how it was just somebody's porch. And the parrots bounced back. And now they're into the more risky area of the forest where the drug trade happens and where people are illegally destroying the forest to put in illegal cattle ranches. The critically endangered great green macaw, they have declared an indigenous parrot sanctuary in this area. So progress can be made, and yet the risks continue. This is Santiago Lacut, the leader of our project in Honduras. This is our project truck. You can see it's been shot up. People tried to assassinate him and his son 3 years ago. They survived. They were okay. We eventually got our truck repaired, and it's now going again. So in our work in conservation, I mean, you all know it's fragile what we're doing out there, but people and parrots are strong. And an example of what can be accomplished, this is macaw nest where we had 100% poaching, as I said in the beginning, and now it runs about 20%. In 2025, we were at 21%. It was our worst year yet. And these are the number of nests that are being protected. And so the birds, it's a Band-Aid approach. We're not changing everything, but using these techniques, we can at least stave off the complete loss of the birds. And so this is all true with our conservation projects, but we want to do more. I mean, this is good, but we need to do more because it's an entire system that is out of whack that needs treatment. The way that people can flourish, so ecosystems can flourish. And that's why in our day-to-day work, we emphasize transformative conservation. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's saying basically everything needs to change. The interchange of how we relate to one another and to nature and to birds. So we need a reorientation about that. And also the outer changes, our societies need to change. They need to be more just and equitable. And so we design our conservation plans based on that long-term goal, but we seek immediate goals right now that we each take a little piece of the pie, a little piece of the puzzle to save what we can now and do collaborative teams for the future. So there are a ton of parrot heroes out there, superheroes, and you all are too, for listening to this and doing your work and going through school and to help make this world a better place through parrot veterinary medicine, conservation medicine, or whatever you do will be helping. So I'm sorry I wasn't there in person, but quite chatty on WhatsApp and on email. So I hope to hear from you, and the best to you.